We're on a path right now, Leonard, that is not sustainable. It's pretty frightening when you add up the resource constraints of oil, the water crises that we have, the climate change that's underway, and the lack of leadership. On the other hand, the book is not meant to be an alarmist book saying it's all over, the party's over, and there are some of those on the shelves right now. It's actually saying if we just steer a little bit more wisely, if we're doing a little bit less war and a little bit more investment in our future, we can find a way around all of this.
So you're saying we should spend the money now rather than later?
We need to confront the fact that we have a serious problem on this planet that's not going to be solved by putting troops in the Middle East. We have to address an energy crisis. We have to address a climate crisis. We have to understand that in a very crowded world, 6.7 billion people now, in which the United States is only 5% of the world's population, we need to agree with other countries, not think that we're so indispensable and so powerful that we can just swagger around and find our way through this. It will not work. Obviously, it isn't working, but that was predictable.
Now, when you say we, you're talking about the United States, or you're talking about the wealthier countries of the world?
I can't help when I write a book like this to be thinking about fellow Americans, though the book is really written for a world that has to act together. There is no way out of our problems unless China and the United States, for example, are actively working on new approaches for energy systems. Japan, obviously, as a technology leader, has a big role to play. But we believed for a number of years that, these are secondary or third order issues, and that's tree huggers, that's environmentalism. Let's get on with the real business of economic development. But this is now the real business of economic development.
Well, we've been hearing about population explosion as a real problem for years, but it doesn't seem to have resonated. Is it because it's not happening here, or are we experiencing as much of a population boom as the rest of the world?
Well, funny thing happened about 40 years ago. We had the predictions of the population bomb, and
all of those things where they said more people live on Earth right now than have lived on Earth throughout the whole history of the planet.
That was correct, and people warned that the world population growing then at about 2% per year, meaning a doubling of the world's population every 35 years, would be catastrophic. Like many alarms that have been sounded in the past, that didn't come to pass, in part because the alarm headed it off. So
China started a draconian
China
policy.
had its draconian policy of one child, but even more mild policies of introducing family planning and contraception, and helping people to understand that smaller families with better educated and better cared for children would be better for them around the world really took hold. So we stopped talking about the population bomb because the world population as a growth rate began to slow. But what is still the fact is we're adding about 80 million people net to the world every year right now. We're on a trajectory of adding another 2.5 billion people roughly to the world's population by the middle of the century. We're already very crowded. Unlike past centuries, there's no place to run, no place to hide. And in this sense, we do have a very serious continuing population challenge. And as my book emphasizes, it is worst in the poorest places in the world, not coincidentally. So the very places that can't create jobs, that can't feed the people, are the ones with the most rapidly growing populations now. And yet we're essentially ignoring that because for political reasons, we don't even talk about contraception and family planning anymore in public discourse in this country.